I never not get nervous when it's counting down. I don't
Really?
know why.
You're so weird.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe nervous is the wrong word. Just like anticipate that feeling of anticipation.
That's good. Yeah. No, that's a good thing. You don't want to be
Yeah,
asleep at the
Yeah, a little
wheel.
bit of excitement mixed
Yeah,
in
yeah.
there.
It works.
all the feelings. No
Yeah.
bad
Lots of
feelings.
feelings.
No feelings are bad. We've got to feel all the feelings, is what they tell us.
No, you really do. You
This
really
is
do.
we're on topic for a contemporary dad podcast. Not like the stuff from 30 years ago that was just like, they didn't say
No,
anything.
those dad podcasts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they just,
the dad podcasts from 30 years ago do not hold
no,
up.
they don't. They just talk about how much money they made and the
Yeah.
affairs they had with their secretary. That didn't happen.
Welcome, Nick Holmquist, to
Thank
World's
you.
Greatest Dad. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Ollie, tell our listener who Nick Holmquist
Man,
is.
I gotta tell you, and let's just preface it with Neil really came up with a banger. 67 questions on here. I didn't even bother letting Neil know what I thought about it. I just save it for, what we get in the can. My God, I was like, gee, we got a lot to unload here. And that's how special Nick is. Folks, Nick Holmquist, and I think I'm saying that correctly, is a father of two. He has spent the last decade as a software engineer building systems to solve I can't even say it to solve complex problems, and he spent the last 6 months building a completely different kind of system, a gamified approach to parenting, drawing from his lifelong passion for gaming and role-playing games, or RPG, as I've come to learn as a dad, and a special interest in board games. Nick has developed the 5 guilds of connection, a framework that transforms everyday parenting challenges into engaging adventures that strengthen family bonds. And I just want to tell you, Nick, this is a world that I remember a little bit of D&D happening in 7th grade, never dove into it. However, because of my own son, as a dad, I have spent time
Yeah.
in these gaming cafes. And let me tell you, when you bring an 8-year-old, he thinks he knows how to play, but he doesn't. So you're sitting there in this pretty, it's a gaming cafe. There are adults there who know
Right.
the ins and outs. And me and my wife are looking at each other like, wow, what do we got to figure this out for him. So
Right.
I already feel like a kind of a kinship, a bond here, because as dads, sometimes we have to get into worlds, other worlds, dragon worlds that we never actually step foot into on our own astral plane, but because we're dads, we
Yeah.
step into that astral plane. How's that for some homework, Neil?
Oh, yeah.
It's my life. Here we go.
Thank you for doing the homework,
Yeah.
Ollie. Nick, tell us about how old are your kids?
So my son is 2 and my daughter's 4.
Full house.
And the gamification
Mhm.
of parenting. I know it wasn't like right at birth. You weren't in the delivery room going, all right, let's make this a game. Here we go.
I rolled a D20 and, I'm just
He
kidding.
took it. I was going to say it. He had a 32 die,
Yeah.
and the OBGYN's like, you can't have that in here. Amazing.
You got to roll for personality traits, right out of the gate.
There's some truth to that, actually.
Yeah.
There is some truth to that.
Tell us though, because we, as Ollie outed me, we've got 67 questions. I don't know if we'll get to all of them. Like I said, it's gonna be casual, free flowing.
Mhm.
But we want it to be prepared
Yeah.
because you are prepared. You are a dad who has systems and frameworks, and as you may or may not know, Ollie and I do not have those systems, and we're figuring it out. So we want to know from you, what is gamified parenting?
Well, I just want to lead things off with saying I'm very much so figuring stuff out as I go too. There's a lot in the works still, but so kind of the idea of gamified parenting, I was trying to bridge the gap. Like I really want to make a board game. That's like a big passion project of mine. So I've been trying to bridge the gap of like parenthood and my ambition, because it's it's been difficult trying to juggle the two. So I was talking with a mentor of mine, and the idea just came up of like, why not just gamifying parenting? And it's the more I dug into it, it really stuck with me. And the more I looked into it, the more it made sense. Because I don't know if you guys have ever experienced like trying to dive into a lecture with your kids. You have like a really important point that you're about to make. You're going to change their lives, and then they walk away before you even made the main point. So it's like the gamification aspect is that's how you engage them. It's how you bring them in, and you're kind of stepping into their world a little bit because they like that, made up, the exploration, like anything goes. So it's the idea of it is it's like bridging the gap. Like you can impart lessons, you can make it fun at the same time, and then at the core of it, you're connecting, you're playing a game, but you're also doing these things that you feel you need to do as a dad, these teaching these lessons, and that's kind of what brought the idea about.
So,
And what
oh,
and then just sorry, go ahead.
oh well, all right. We'll just. I don't. Neil's fired up because he did come up with the 67 questions. So I'm gonna have to maybe consider the fact that he's gonna want to barrel through it.
I'm gonna try to get a word in.
I know.
I'm gonna get my 67
It's
questions.
true. I am a babble mouth, but I'm kind of fascinated about this. I have some ideas of maybe how this is personal to you because of your passions and whatnot. But I feel like there's something very
Hmm.
interesting about. And what's interesting about this is, my kid's 13, so I have to kind of look back in time a little bit. But I feel like part of
Hmm.
this maybe helps you out in the particular phase of dadhood that you're in, which is, dealing with younger kids who have, to a degree shorter attention spans and, just trying to realizing that there's a larger gap. When did you come to the conclusion that something that is your clear passion for a long time could actually apply to parenting?
Well, it's an idea I've been toying with for a long time because the kids are constantly inspiring me with the ridiculous stuff they do. And like, oh, that'd be a hilarious board game mechanic, or like, it's like getting kids to sleep, getting kids to get in the car. It's like all these little things that before you're a parent, you're like, oh, you don't even really think
Sure.
about it. And then you get into it, and it's like it took me 2 hours to get my kid to bed last
Yeah.
night, and you're like, I wasn't prepared for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. God, it's so funny. Like I'm like nostalgic for that, but I'm not. I am, and I'm not.
Yeah.
So, was there like a certain thing where you were like, okay, like what was there an initial game you decided to play to kind of be like, all right, maybe this will work. You pretend you're an orc, okay, and go into the well.
Yeah, it started a little more simply than that. I've kind of my natural tendencies are to like, okay, how could I make this fun? So it's something I've always kind of done as a parent. Like the system has really been coming together over the last 6 months, but it's like just trying to like, how could I make this transition more fun? Like trying to sprinkle a little fun into it to try to bring them along for the ride. So it's not just like, okay, do this, do this, do this. So one of the big examples that pops up for me is hand washing with my daughter as she was learning, as we were potty training. It started out as a bit of a struggle, and this is coming from someone who in the past was a bit of a germaphobe. So it was like it was too important for me to have her wash her hands. So it was like she felt that like pressure, which I wasn't putting on her intentionally. It was just like and that would produce a lot of resistance. Then we'd have these big blow up tantrums over washing hands, and it's like after a while I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way. So then this one isn't an original of mine. I think I read this in a different parenting book, but the idea of like acting like I didn't know how to wash my hands, just like, oh man, so do I stick my hands in the toilet or what? And then just like, and then my daughter would, she'd join in right away. Like, no, dad, you go to the sink. I was like, oh, can you show me? And then she'd just go and wash her hands, and we wouldn't have a big battle anymore. And it was like, wow, this is amazing.
Wow. So it was like putting your instead of it seemed like and not correct me if I'm wrong, but part of it was just kind of letting your kid assume that they were in the driver's seat. You know, let them kind of like kind of show me what to do.
Yeah,
Do you think that's tailored to
absolutely.
your daughter? Like, I know your son's 2, so hard to get into the deep, long conversations with the 2-year-old. I don't know. Your kid might be different than
Yes.
mine, but like, do you think there's something that has to do with her particular personality?
That's always a possibility. I feel like there's a flavor of this though that could work with any kid
Mm.
and any parent because obviously we're coming from like me as a big gaming background is different than someone who maybe never
Mm-hmm.
gamed, and I understand that like we all have to come into it from where we're at and where our kids are at, but it's an exploration. It's like you've got, I mean, 18 years to just practice to try things out. Like I'm a big experimenter, so it's like if something doesn't go well or like if I have an issue, I try to, run it back through my head like, okay, what could I try different here? Like try to pinpoint the problem and then try to evolve my approach as I go. Like that's something I've always done and now I'm just kind of adding like the system aspect to it that makes it a little more procedural, a little more um effective, hopefully.
Does your daughter know that there's this whole philosophy approach behind it, or does she just think, "Oh, Dad always comes up with these fun games that we play"?
Uh she probably doesn't know quite yet. She might be picking up on a little bit of it. She's very very crafty. But yeah, I think for the most part, I don't think it's been a big deviation from how I've always parented. It's just like I'm being a little more intentional about it is the big difference.
What does your partner feel? Does she play the game too, or does your partner play the games well?
She does a little bit. She's not as um, she's very very different personality type than me. So she's a little more of the like she gets things moving a little more effectively than I do sometimes. Like I'm sitting there trying to craft a fun way to get through a problem. She's like, "All right, here we go. Let's just."
So is it a source of contention? Is she like, okay, enough of the game. Let's just get in the car, wash your hands.
Sometimes,
Okay, okay,
yeah, sometimes.
interesting.
But then other times, my games actually make things move faster. Like things, and when they land, it's like such a smooth transition. It's like we just had a fun time. It's just like a fun little moment, and boom. They don't always
Right, right,
land,
right, right.
but they.
Well, that's in.
What's a recent one that worked out really well? What's like a game you guys played or made up to get through a situation?
Yeah, so what I've been experimenting a lot with storytelling lately, and I feel like again, you have to tailor this stuff to your kids. Like this is working really well with my daughter, but then my son, I don't I may be a skill issue, like maybe I need to figure out how to craft the stories better for a 2-year-old, but so far I've mainly been effective with my daughter with those. But we had a situation like we went to the library as a family, and it seemed like we all had a good time. But then at that night, my daughter was saying like, "I never want to go to the library again." And it's like when I hear stuff like that, it's like, okay, I gotta unpack this a little bit, figure out what happened. And luckily, I was, I don't always catch stuff, but I like she was playing these tablet games and she lost at a level, and I think she's getting to a point where she just really doesn't like losing. And so I was able to kind of bring that up and like I figured out like okay, so it was because of this tablet game she lost that was tough for her. So, I just like, all right, here we go. Failure, it's a big part of how we grow as people. And boom, she's interrupting me, like not interested. And I was like, okay, let's actually use my system. Let me take a step back here. And then I've been coming up with these characters, Harper and Sloan. So like Sloan's the mentor and Harper is essentially a fantasy version of my daughter in some ways. She's her own person, but so I went into a Harper and Sloan story about uh, you know, and the cool thing was like right away as I just framed it, like, all right, let me tell you a story. My daughter was like, can you can you make it so Harper's in the library and she has
No
a
way.
problem,
Okay.
like a similar problem to me, and it's like it's almost as if she was saying to me like I want to talk about this problem, but it's too much for me to face head on right now. So it's like, how can we, work around it and like still face the issue, but in a more in a space with more area between it, and like that to me was like a huge win.
So you'll just get into like story time, but it's completely rooted in the issues of the day, the moment, whatever.
Yeah, it's what I've been experimenting a lot with it lately, and I've been finding it to be pretty effective. At like my sorry, I don't know if you can hear my son back
It's all
there, but
part of the. We expect it. We expect it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't be the world's greatest dad if you didn't have kids in the
Oh
background.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
yep, yep.
Yeah. I've done many a call in the bathroom or in the parking lot when I used to live in a one bed, basically a single room loft when my kid was like 0 to 3. So I know it. I know it well, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, do what you got to do.
You know,
Have you been back to the library since?
Not yet. That actually just happened last week. It's hard to keep track of days if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But yeah.
my God, my man
Are you with the
4 and 2.
kids?
Yeah, I get it.
Are you with the kids full time? Is there kind of like a daycare drop off? I mean, she's in school, right? Like, what's the day-to-day situation, and how do you fold the gaming and gamification into all that?
Yeah, I'm in kind of a weird stage of life right now. I actually lost my job back in
Mm.
January, so I've been unemployed for a bit now. So my wife and I, we've been kind of experimenting with different approaches. She went back to work for a little bit, so I was like the main caregiver, which, by the way, way harder than working working a job. Um, but so right now, the current situation is we're kind of both home, and I've been looking for a job. My daughter just finished up school. She is doing some weeks of summer camp. And then the next year we're trying out homeschooling, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, I mean, talk about gamifying parenting. You know, that's yeah, you're about to get into the next level there. PS6. Um, I wanted to kind of get into like the actual what you figured out. Like, you have an actual system here. And
Hmm.
it sounds like it's 3 pillars. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what pillars you're talking about. I have the five guilds that I've kind of mapped
I
out.
don't know if it was one of your games, the connection, control, and reward.
Okay. Yeah, I've probably written about that. I've put out a lot of
You're
newsletters.
pro- you're prolific, Nick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm happy to get into the guilds. I mean, that's very RPG
Yeah.
right there. So yeah, tell us about the guilds. The
What are
guilds.
the
Yeah.
guilds?
Yeah, sure, sure. Uh, yeah, and actually, I will say, like, as far as the pillars go, I have kind of built this on, like connection. Connection is like that's connection-based parenting is really like my big focus with my general approach because it's like there's that big wave of behavioral modifications which was all about like, okay, we have this thing we don't like that our kid does, how do we stop this thing? It's very surface level. It's like instead of just focusing on like the behavior, I want to go a level deeper, like why did that behavior happen? Like why did we get into a big fight over this thing that felt small to me, but like why didn't it feel small to my kid? Or it's like, so it's like getting a layer deeper. And then like the other two aspects that I think are really important is this system's also built on developing emotional regulation skills, which to me it's like foundational to live an effective life. So it's like such an important skill that I want to pass on to my kids. And then also pairing that with a growth mindset, because it's like to be able to get to where you want to be in life, like you got to be prepared to grow. You got to be prepared to evolve. And like I think pairing, like the connection based parenting, like so that way, my kid doesn't feel like I'm just shouting orders at them all the time. I'm only focused on how their behaviors are impacting me and not what's going on internally for them. And then like yeah, the emotional regulation is what helps them conquer the difficulties that they face throughout their day to day. Obviously, kids are still have a lot of developing to do, so there's going to be a delayed impact that I'm expecting. Like, they're not going to be fully emotionally mature until, like, what is it, 25, when our brains stop developing. But just like, I think getting those skills in place now is what is going to set them up for success in the future. And I may add more stuff over time, but like that, those are kind of like, if I were to give 3 pillars, like that's kind of where my brain goes to, is like that connection based parenting, emotional regulation, and growth mindset. And then so for the guilds, I actually those are kind of the aspects of connection, is kind of how I think of those. So they're all a different piece of the puzzle to like feel deeply connected to your kid.
How'd you come up with all this? I mean, like, it feels like you've like raised like 12 kids to come up with this kind of information and insight, Like, my kid's 13, and I'm like, oh damn, I should write all this down. Yeah, I wish I knew about this a while ago.
Well, a lot of it, like a big thing for me too, is that I want this to all be like science based. Like
Mm.
it's based in what the research says is best for kids. So like I've pulled a lot of these insights from I don't know if you've read like Dr. Becky Kennedy's book Good Inside. Fantastic
Mm.
book. I like her whole philosophy. I'm just so behind just the concept that, like, if I were to sum it up, like the core idea is when you like see your kid do something, like the way you want to think about it is like, okay, so if I'm assuming my kid is good inside, which just makes sense to me, like that just seems like such a safe assumption to make. Like if I'm assuming my kid is good inside with the best intentions, why did they do this thing that I didn't like? And it's like that to me is how you like peel back the layers and like, okay, so they're dealing with this struggle. It's like, how can I help them with that struggle instead of focusing on the thing I didn't like, you know? So that's kind of over. I've read a few parenting books and I've extracted stuff from them. And then like the connection based parenting was really inspired by like the modern parenting books that teach that. And then the breaking down of connection was something I've just done over the months I've been working on this and kind of thinking through the different aspects.
What are some other books in that kind of world that you recommend that you've been reading?
So Good Inside, highly recommend. There's also The Whole Brain Child is a good one. That's kind of the science of connecting the emotional brain and the logical brain. Yeah, it's fascinating. The way they describe it in the book is it's actually like a staircase in your mind, and if your emotions become overflared off, the kids just lose access to the upstairs. So it's like, um, yeah, so that's part of the system too. It's just trying to like, bring the energy down, help regulate. Which a big part of that is you as the parent being regulated.
Mm.
You have to model the regulation for your kids to pick up on
Hmm.
it. Because if they're screaming and then you start screaming, like what I mean, the energy is just so high. Like there's nobody's calming down at that point.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Like, so I've got a 7-year-old daughter and an almost 5-year-old son, and
Hmm.
my wife and I also subscribe to the. Ollie's a little older than us, Nick. He's Gen X, so he doesn't know about Becky Kennedy or
Yeah.
Janet Lansbury, but so we have tried and tried to do the gentle parenting approach. that is kind of all the rage. And I struggle with it sometimes because, you know, while I do love the idea of like not losing my shit on my kids
Yeah.
and, becoming dysregulated myself, I start to sometimes like flash forward, 15 years, 20 years, and I'm like, am I just a pushover? Am I just letting them rule the roost? I mean, and there's that line between discipline and gentleness and kindness. And I know these books have some thoughts on that, but I'm curious how you've approached these moments where sometimes you do just lose it because you're a human being too,
Mhm.
and how do you incorporate like the game of it all and not being kind of just a floor for them to walk over, but also modeling emotional regulation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a struggle, like just as people, like you just never know like what the day is going to hand you, and then it's like if you've had a tough day and then your kids are in a mood. I mean, and that's the crazy thing too is it's like when your emotions like that vibe you're putting out, your kids are going to pick up on it. So it almost is like when you're in a bad place, they're almost more likely to be in a bad place, which, sets you up to be triggered more likely. So it's the struggle is real. The struggle is real. Yeah, so I don't know if I've effectively come up with how to like weave repair into my system yet. I For that, it's to me it's more of just like owning up my mistakes to my kids, like, hey, daddy lost his cool there. That was my big emotions getting a hold of me, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have raised my voice like that. And like just being honest, just being upfront, like I made a mistake. And like I think that goes so far to just like being able to move forward and showing your kids that like it doesn't stop just because you grow up. It's like it's an ever evolving process. You get better at things, but then life also gets harder in some ways. So it's like you gotta, in a lot of ways, maybe as you get old. But so it's yeah, it's just that I feel like having that respect, that honest conversation with your kids is huge. That's something I really try to focus on is like, even my kids are small and I'm technically, I'm like in charge of them. I try to just be respectful. I think that's something I feel like that's gotten a lot better, but the old style of parenting definitely didn't have that dual pathway of respect.
Well, as you know, in my day, it's kind of funny. Like, I feel like in some ways I can certainly chime in because I've graduated to this level where, like, I have, like, really, sometimes the same, I could have a conversation with my 13-year-old that I could have with you guys. You know what I mean? Like, one day you're like, oh, whoa, like, look at this. He's pretty autonomous. Like, I can leave the house for a couple hours. He's fine. You know what I mean? Especially with iPads and stuff like that. But I do remember certainly like being in the true trenches with toddlers. The toddler trenches is what's up, right? And also, Nick, I can relate. I remember being home. There was a year where I was like, not working, and we killed daycare, and I was just there with him and stuff. And I remember so well, like losing my shit. He's losing his shit. I'm losing my shit. Who knows where it all started? And eventually, like, without reading this book, I could tell you this, like, at least for me, I could say, yeah, like flipping out didn't work. Also, that's not really me. You know what I mean? Like, I think there are just also, and Neil, we've talked about this, when you go to like daycare and you see other parents and you're like, oh, is that how I'm supposed to be? But it's like, you just can't be Mr. Businessman if you're not Mr. Businessman and all that carries with you. So I think there's a certain kind of like, to a degree, regardless of the generational divide we have, there are
Mhm.
who we are in terms of our personalities, which dictate our professions and dictate our friends, that also kind of essentially do kind of create this parenting style. Because again, without reading these books, and quite frankly bothered myself with reading books, I was like, I think I have an idea. There's an instinct in here, and and I will lean on the category of, I mean, look, like my wife's the sheriff. You know what I mean? That's and you know what? That's okay. That's okay too. You know what I mean? I'd love to be balanced. I'd love to, be like, oh yeah, I can have fun and lay down the law, but luckily, there is a sheriff, a marshal in town, and I can get mad too. And unfortunately, when I get mad, it's really not fun, and it only happens every blue moon. That's when Dad turns into the Wolf Man. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I think to a degree, some of it is just like, I feel like there's certain, when you're true to yourself a little bit, I think maybe some of this stuff kind of does come out organically a bit. See, I'm defending Gen X. Some of us had good instincts without Kennedy's book.
You did the best you could, Ollie.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah.
And so did you.
No, it's
That's it. And that's all that happens. That's all that happens. See?
What was your experience growing up, Nick? I mean, what are some like lessons you got from your parents that maybe you carry through, and then maybe some that you're like, I'm going to do that a little bit differently?
yeah, yeah. So, um, I think a big thing that I took away from my childhood was just being a kind person. I think it was probably like that flows through my family pretty well, just kindness. And like that's a big thing that I want to pass on to my kids. Like not being a pushover. Like there's you got to be kind to yourself too. So there's a line there where you have to, have that introspection of like, I don't like how you're talking to me right now, and I'm not going to let you just, steamroll over me. Um, which maybe I was lacking some of that when I was younger. But yeah, I think the kindness is probably one of the core lessons that I learned as a kid. A big thing that I'm gonna do a little differently is I spent a lot of time gaming growing up, and thinking back, it's like it probably would have been good to get outside a little more and spend more time with friends and like do more stuff out of the house. So I'm not anti-screen with my kids, and especially with their ages. It's they mostly just watch movies right now is what we try to limit it to. But it's yeah, finding that balance where they can explore their creativity and like pursue goals outside of just like what am I watching today. It's kind of a big goal for me as a parent to help facilitate, because like I loved gaming growing up. I At the time it was great, but then I think back and it's like I spent a lot of time just on the couch, and I could have diversified my experiences a little bit.
Do you think that's what led us here, though? The 10,000 hours of RPG and gaming are what inspired you to be a gamified parent?
That's what's interesting about life, huh? It's like you think back to those experiences, and like in my current life position, like I don't actually play that many games now because
Yeah.
I just don't really have the time.
Totally.
I try to get in board games when I can, but like video games, I haven't actually touched for. I mean, I played a little bit of Mario with my daughter, but that's about it. Um, probably like that. There is an aspect of that has inspired this whole journey. But yeah, it's just interesting because as a kid, I was already ambitious. I remember like drawing um, game cover art for the games I'm gonna make, and that's actually why I got into programming initially. But then I, found out the insane hours that game developers work, and I was like, I don't want to do that.
What is your programming background? What kind of software development? Ollie was an actor and I studied English, so we're
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
teach
I know.
us some
Seriously.
stuff, Nick.
Sure, yeah, it's so mostly what I've done is like web development. Um, so like add features to websites, like build processes for people to upload things, or To get more specific, my last job was at a software company that built back office software for uh, McDonald's and other fast food chains. So it was a lot of what I was working on was I did a lot of the front end work. So I was like they had this legacy system that they built for McDonald's and they wanted to expand it to other companies. So I was helping take what was already there and build it into a modern framework. And yeah, and legacy is just like old software essentially. It's just and so
What
it's like
what is the programs you were building for McDonald's? What does that allow like people in the back office to do? Like invoices or like what are you building?
the main thing, the main piece I was working on was inventory management. So it's like the software that they would use to be like, okay, we've got 12 cases of fries and that kind of stuff. And like tracking as things get sold and like so there's a lot of pieces of like when the register information the gets sent over, we have to pull that down and we have to process it, and then that's what updates the inventory stock levels. And yeah, and the pieces I was working on was mostly just the user interface. So like what they would interact with to, input their product and update their inventory and all that kind of stuff.
Is that like UX, user or UI or all what would
Yeah, UI UX is yeah, it's user interface. I don't remember what the UX stands for right now, but
your experience?
that might be
Neil,
it.
it's impressive for a English major.
Thank you.
You know.
Communications minor.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you
Um,
go.
and then so how do you like figure out the user interface, user experience for your kids and kind of make things super so they're not just like bip bop and they're like, again, figure out how to make mom and dad work.
Okay, so you're saying like just the like how they interact with us.
I'm making a bridge. I'm making the
Okay.
analogy between your UI, UX and being a dad. How does that all
Okay. Yeah, I think that's where the gamification aspect comes into play. That's the bridge to me. Like that's the like, hey, like we can learn this stuff, we can do it together, and we can have a good time. You know, it's like bringing them along for the ride.
So, so it sounds like there's general gamification. There's the storytelling aspect. Do you feel like your daughter, and I'm sure your son might have some, say in it too. But do you feel like your daughter enjoys one version more than the other?
Um, I think I feel like she responds well to a lot of it. She's been really enjoying the
Yeah.
storytelling. And she's, some of the stories I've made up, she's asked me to repeat multiple times and then she's also this is also a cool aspect is she's added to the story.
Huh.
It's like this one story, let's see. I was coming up with for oh, okay. So I was trying to that's right. I was trying to make a bridge for screen time. So Harper was in the library and she learned a new spell called mind channeling, which was my like fantasy version of where you could like take a book and mind channel it, so it just like projects into your mind. And I was telling the story about how Harper learned this spell. She went to her room and but later that day it was actually Sloane's birthday and she had planned an art project that she wanted to make for him, but she got caught up mind channeling and she ran out of time. So she had to go to Sloane's party empty-handed without the painting that she planned to make him. And so I told that story to my daughter, and then the second time around, she came up like the things she focused on. I'm trying to give this lesson on screens, and she was like, "Okay, what was this art project though?" And she's like, "I think it was a magical rainbow tulip." And I was like, "All right." Like magical rainbow tulip, and then we told the story again, and this time the magical rainbow tulip was a
Hmm.
character that actually was able to just whip out an art project for Harper to take to Sloane's birthday. And I was like, okay, like, all right, I guess we've got this magical rainbow tulip now. And it was like, yeah, this iteration where she was just building on it as we were talking through it. And it's like that to me, that like, that is awesome. Just like that engagement. She's, her creativity's going, she's coming up with characters. It's like that to me is like, that's, even though the specific lesson that I was trying to teach didn't necessarily like fully land. I feel like a lot of lessons though, it's not like one and
Right.
done too, is another aspect of that. You're like just adding that idea into their subconscious. So it's like, oh, should I keep watching TV? Or I mean, she's too young probably to think about that right now, but over time I feel like that's what the result will be if we do this for years and years. Like, it's going to be just all these micro lessons getting planted that have time to bloom over time.
Did I mean, you mentioned like you know, the way you were brought up, there was a general sense of kindness as kind of a as a theme. Here's the theme in the Holmquist family. We're going to be kind. And that's important, right? You know, self-love, loving other people, stuff like
Hmm.
that. Like, and it feels like that's where, you know, the heart of this parenting style is rooted in, right? Like, do your parents, like, did they do a lot of story time, storytelling? Have they, you know, borne witness to this unique parenting style of yours?
Not too
Mm-hmm.
much. My mom would read us stories before
Uh-huh.
bed. Well, I have memories of her like working through The Hobbit and stuff like that before bed, but she didn't. I don't really remember her coming up with a
I
lot of
see. Okay.
stories. Yeah, yeah. So this is kind of
This is
something
all
I'm
you.
I'm just forging on my
Yeah.
own. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's interesting. I Neil, do you do any of this stuff? Do you ever like tell stories to the kids? Puppet shows? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we're silly. I've never made it into like a game
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. In like, I'm not a very competitive person.
Mm-hmm.
And so but I'm also not very scientific. So I think I lean into the silliness. I like creating characters and doing voices and it's interesting when you said before, Nick, like there's this, yeah, I'll use that strategy with my kids a lot. The like, is this how you wash your hands? Or, like, oh, this is how you eat the food, right? No. It works a little bit better with my son, who's almost 5. I'm
Hmm.
sure he'll stop working soon. I'll have to change approaches. But yeah, no, I look, I think we're all kind of doing versions of this, right? Like you know, parent, all the world's a stage, and one of the roles we're playing is parent, right? And I think you're just maybe doing it more literally than the rest of us. But I mean, my wife and I talk about a lot, performative parenting. A lot of times you'll see people out at the playground, and you're like, and they're very loudly Reagan, Reagan. Oh, is this a fun activity on the swing? And you're like, is this for me or your daughter? You're like, why are we involved in your parenting thing? Who is this really for? Um, what I know, I know you have some trolls, some critics. We do too on the old TikTok. I don't know if you've seen them, Ollie.
Wait, really?
People are hating.
I
We
thought it
got
was
haters.
just you coming up with comments to boost performance.
I've got a lot of different usernames. No, I'm curious, like the people who have criticism for this, who are like, what, parenting is serious, and why are you making everything a game, and why are you polluting your children's mind with points and all this? I mean, what is your kind of retort to people who've criticized the gamification of parenting philosophy?
Yeah, yeah. Great question. So to me, it's a matter of how you approach it. I could totally see that if I was just some guy just coming up with games with no like scientific backing. Which, to be fair, like there's space for that too, to just like have fun games with your kids. Like there's nothing wrong with that. the big thing for me is I wanted a system that helped me think through like what I need to do to feel like I'm fully showing up as a dad, you know? Because there's like there's multiple steps to take in different situations where it can be easy to get lost in the emotion, and I feel like having a system to fall back on helps you stay on top of it and helps you like in retrospect feel like okay, I showed up the best I could there for my kids. And yeah, and I think like why does everything have to be so serious? You know, is like another point I think is worth making. Like parenting is
Yeah.
tough. It's tough. And if you're just taking it on the teeth all the time, it just I like it's easy to get worn down. Like I to me like having fun and like that's the point, isn't it? Like to be engaging with your
Hmm.
kids, to make them laugh, to just share joy together. Like that to me is like that's how you have a good childhood. It's not I mean like learning to do chores and be disciplined and stuff is important too, but I think having that element of fun, which I do want to be fair to the other dads out there that are more serious, but even for them, I think there's room for fun. I think their kids would probably be craving it and would really enjoy you to just break that out unexpectedly, you know? Like I think that could be real impactful for your the connection with your kids.
It is interesting, and we talk about this sometimes again because the part of it is generational. Like, and Ali, I think we've talked about this too. Like, sometimes you're talking to other parents or just other adults. You're at a party or somewhere, and you're like, "Yeah, my dad never played with
Yeah.
us." Like, and I imagine there were parents. I'm 40. Ali's
Eight.
47.
48. Look at
48.
this. It's getting
48.
thin up
Yeah.
here.
And I had a fine childhood, but I didn't. Yeah, we didn't like play games with my parents. That was for kids, and I do think like part of it is generational. I think that there's more parents who play, but there's still some who that you'll see them at the park at the playground, and they're just like, "No, I don't play. I'm here to watch. I'm here to supervise." Why do you think it's so important not just to supervise your kids, but to play with your kids?
Well, I you're entering their world. You know, like that's the world they exist in right now is one of play and fun. And it's like just yesterday we took the kids to the zoo and it's like, I went down the slide with them because they wanted me to. And it's like, why not? You know? It's is it a little small for me? Yes, it is. But you just have a good time. They're laughing. Like I think it's another aspect of respect in some ways because it's like we're asking our kids to enter our world all the time, like clean up your plate, pick up the floor, get in the car. Like these are all things that we regularly have to just spew out at our kids. Like obviously there's like ways to gamify and make it more fun so it doesn't feel like you're just lecturing and giving orders all the time. But I think it really like as we're talking about it feels like an element of respect to just like enter their world. Like I respect the play that you want to have and like let me step into your world with you and be a part of that.
You bring up something I think very interesting, which is to respect their world and respect them regardless of their age and stuff. I had a experience observing a parent and their child, and we're of the same age and their kid's older, and they like the context was the child was friends with this influencer called Homeless Fisherman, and our conversation was, I don't think Homeless Fisherman's homeless. He's got a pretty solid Instagram account. He might say he's living in a van and they've totally like met this guy or whatever. And so we're like, to be totally blunt too, like we're out, it's an evening, we're having cocktails, you know what I mean? We're telling jokes about homeless fishermen. And then eventually at one point, the kid's just like, you know what? Stop. Like he's my friend, and he it was this moment where it's like, yeah, sometimes, and I've noticed this too. Like, there's a time where your child will put their foot down. And I think it is important at an early age on the parent side to kind of go, hang on, like, I've seen this with my kid too, where it's like, yeah, his feelings were hurt. You know what I mean? We were, like he cares, he has his interests and stuff like that too. So I think that's very, very fascinating. And I certainly generationally the divide between me and my dad is so massive. It's like incredible. And I think as we got older, you realize like, wow, those things that you think were such a big deal to him, grades and whatnot, where I went to college just don't really matter at the end of the day. So you really have to kind of like step back, look at the bigger picture. I think that is starts with respecting them, and their interests too. That is something I do try and do. It also helps because my kid and I are closer in general interest. My wife's had to really had to. She is not a gamer. She has done a lot to learn about the anime world. For her to go to the gaming cafe was a real stretch. Real stretch there, I'll tell you that much. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, I wanna go back because I know that you use science to kind of, and it's like where science meets role playing and fun and gaming and parenting and like, um, how are you how are you implementing like scientific metrics? Are you like journaling? Are you kind of keeping numerical data points of like it took 5 minutes to come down from that tantrum. Yesterday it was 8 minutes and kind
I
of
like that.
looking at trends over time or is it kind of day to day? How are you tracking this journey so far?
I wish I was that on point with it, but um, yeah, it's tough. I try to note stuff down after it happens, and I do journal every night. That's a habit I've kept up for the last 5 years, and I think it really helps just to process the day. But as far as like specific to the gamification aspects, like I was doing a challenge on Instagram, trying to tackle the daily storytelling, and then life got a little away from me, and I haven't kept up with that. So I don't have a super specific documentation process beyond I do my weekly newsletter, which that I integrate a lot of my lessons into that because that's really like where the rubber meets the road of like that's where I'm building this system and thinking through like, okay, so that's how this went, what and and also just kind of theory crafting like, okay, how could I approach that next time, or it's like a lot of that happens while I'm writing my newsletter. But it would be valuable if I had a daily documentation process. I'm still figuring a lot of that stuff out though.
Maybe we need to create a game for you
Mm,
called gamifying
Yeah.
parenting.
yeah, that would be really helpful.
Gamifying writing it
What
down.
have you heard from other dads who subscribe to your newsletter or watch your stuff, read your stuff about like how they've used the philosophy or things they've taken away? What's kind of the feedback been so far?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't gotten a ton of feedback yet. It's I still have a fairly small audience, so I haven't reached a lot of dads. But like the people I do talk to, it like I can tell there's something there. Like I can feel that I'm like at the very least I can feel the yearning for like a different approach, and like for people to like be able to approach parenting with more fun and more joy, and like and still feel like they're imparting those lessons that they really want to impart onto their kids. But yeah, not a ton of feedback yet. It's still something I'm working on getting more eyes on.
Cool.
You know, it's funny.
Ollie, what else
Well,
you
I
got?
was just gonna say this too. This, you know, like Neil and I are at different stages of daddom. I think that's a word. It's a new word for us at WGD, daddom. But there's something about this one that really takes me back, and it takes me back to probably the era that you're in, Nick, of like when you're at the playground and you're just letting them run wild, and then you're just talking to other dads and just, you know, basically just, getting to know people, really, figuring out like,
Mhm.
who this person is besides a fellow dad who's got these got this thing, that we're trying to, kind of cattle around and just kind of, wrangle. Um, and it's really nice. It just really kind of takes me back. I think like, I don't know. There's something. I don't know what it was. I think about this. It comes in waves where I'm like, was it when he was 7? Was it like in 2019 where all of a sudden I'm like, oh, he got downstairs and made himself cereal, or he's just watching stuff, or he's entertained and he's safe, and I'm like, oh, I don't have to like keep eyes on him all the time. And just going back and, I don't know, like it's kind of a, my wife will call the era you're in the dark time that she doesn't like to think about, because there was a certain intensity to it as well. But it's just been really lovely to kind of like, I don't know, like take it back a little bit, because it's so easy once your kid's older to get caught back up and I'm just staring at my phone. We're all staring at our screens. You know what I mean? Everybody, adults, kids, whatever. There's something about the intensity of the moment of the reality you're in that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Cool, sweet. I don't know, just it's really nice for me to think back to the old days, Neil, the old days. Remember them well.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nick, if someone wants to start, from scratch with a gamified approach, kind of do their own thing, what are a couple tips you'd give them? If they're like, I'm starting this week, I'm in. How can they do it?
Yeah, I would say a big part of getting started is you want to, it comes back to the respect aspect. Like you want to step into your kid's world. So it's like you're bridging a gap between like what you're trying to accomplish and how your kid wants to do it, or like the experience, the how to make it fun for them. So like storytelling, for example, that's been working really well with my daughter, and how I've been working on gamifying that is like, we'll tell the story and then I'll give like some prompts, some options that she can choose to how the story evolves. Like, Harper's feeling bad about not getting Sloan his art project. What should she do? Like, and then then you give options like, should she acknowledge her feelings, like do some introspection, or and stuff like because the goal is like, then I'm teaching that emotional regulation and your kids getting to interact with the story. But for a new dad just getting, or new parent in general just getting into it, like just let them carve out like what's the art project, like that. It doesn't matter from the story's perspective what the art project is, but your kid is going to love coming up with that. At least my daughter does.
It's so funny. I can literally tell you, there's the big takeaway for me with this is that the idea of stepping into their world does not end. I mean, I would even argue like it's true to a degree with adults, the ones that it's easy to hang out with people that are just carbon copies of us. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, and we do that to a certain to a degree. We have shared interests, and that's how you build a relationship or whatever. But it's very fascinating to think of it from it's an idea of, I want to respect this person, respect what they care about, respect their values, and I'm going to choose to
Hmm.
step into their world. Like, I know for myself, I'm in this stage where, and I actually was thinking about asking you this because, like, my kid loves to game. He's got a freaking gaming PC, freaking computer's 50 times more powerful than mine, and he's content to crush that all day. And he's even hitting his max on his screen time limits because school's out. You know what I mean? So that stuff's gonna happen. But you know, there are times where I can pop into his room and he'll be like he'll invite me in literally to be like check this game out, and it's like, do I want to do that? No. But I realize I respect him, and this is something he cares about. So I'm gonna get in there and watch a little bit of the. I'll at least watch the cutscenes. I highly recommend the cutscenes of Ghost of Tsushima. I was like, Jesus, it's like a freaking movie or whatever. We do enjoy anime and stuff like that too, but then I found this, and this might be something that can work in your favor at some point too. Like, um, he'll I can't get him to just like come over and do something exactly what I'm doing, right? Or if he asks me to like cook something, which happens quite a bit, rather than just comply with whatever he says, I'm kind of like, hey, tell me what you think if I added this or that. I'll try and like lure him into the kitchen, have him like can adjust the spices and stuff like that. Part of it's out of practicality. I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna cook this thing, and you go, ugh, I didn't like it. I'm like, no, you kind of jump in here too. But there is something I've just kind of realized too that are been very very strong moments, which is like kind of having them stepping into their world, and then having them kind of step into mine, but out of a mutual kind of interest and stuff. I remember one weekend, like, he was like, can we make French fries? Which is a bear to make. That is not easy to do. But I was so grateful to have spent essentially a weekend doing it, because I will remember it for a long time, and it was something that kind of got him engaged. So it's very interesting, like, and I think like the way you are doing this will evolve, and it can work with adults, because I'm dealing with a little adult too, you know. He just doesn't have all the rights and privileges, but he's getting there, sadly far too quickly than I'd like to acknowledge at times. But been a fascinating perspective, just about, yeah, like looking at him and making sure you don't make fun of homeless fishermen, because homeless fisherman is a person regardless of his actual financial status.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's awesome, Ollie. That's awesome.
Yeah. Neil, I encourage you.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us. I wanna know if will you join us for the World's Greatest Dad Lightning Round?
Ooh.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
Ollie's gonna count us down.
Okay. You ready, Nick? You got to be focused for this one.
I'm ready.
Step into our world.
Okay.
You don't have to respect
All right,
Neil,
here I
though. I
come.
don't care. All right, here we go. Dad Lightning Round number 1. All right, Nick. Choose your power: super speed or telepathy.
Let's go
I had a feeling
telepathy.
you'd say that. Best parenting advice in 5 words or less. 5 words or less.
Respect your kids.
That's 4. That works. Best dad movie ever.
Instant Family, I think is
I'll
what
have
it's
to
called.
watch that one. Kids music you don't hate.
Super simple songs.
Okay. Dream family vacation.
New Zealand.
Good choice. Lord of the Rings guy. Dream family vacation. Oh, wait. Did we say that already? Sorry. I just love that question so much. Nuggets or grilled cheese?
Grilled cheese.
Good call. Good call. Fanny pack or backpack?
Depends what I'm carrying.
Oh, wise man. Most you've paid your kid for a lost tooth?
My kids haven't lost any yet, so
Way to get out of that.
nothing.
How about you, Neil? Well, how much have you shelled out?
I want to say 5.
Oh, that's Jesus. Okay.
$5.
Yeah, you didn't have. Yeah, all right. Too young for Venmo. Best sound your kid makes.
The
Yeah,
laughs.
that's a good one. Most dad thing you've ever done.
Most dad thing I've ever done. I don't know. groan when I get up from the couch. I
Yeah,
don't.
that's very daddy. Your kid's future career prediction.
I don't. My daughter might be president or something.
Okay.
My son, he could. I mean, he's a bit of a tank. He could. I will say, jujitsu star. I don't know.
Wow. All right. You were a very proud dad, I can tell. One book every dad should read.
Good inside.
All right. That was the quickest answer. That is a smart guy right there. Yeah, that's a well-read man who can drop a book advice there. The only dad book I ever read, I was a kid, and it was Fatherhood by Bill Cosby. That obviously did not age well, but it was the 80s, and Bill Cosby was the ultimate dad at the time. So, there we go. Wow.
Nick Holmquist, thank you for joining us on World's Greatest Dad. You are the world's greatest
Yeah,
dad.
seriously.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me so much. It's been a real pleasure.
I'm excited to see how your kids grow up, because I feel like, and I think the storytelling stuff is genuinely fascinating. You use lessons. I think Neil and I are on the same page, where I basically do one with all his stuffed animals, and I've done it within the last 6 months, and it's more of a dysfunctional apartment. They all live together, and yeah, it's more of a sitcom, but like an HBO sitcom. It's a little edgy, edgy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the euphoria of stuffed animals.
Yeah. There's always
Hey, you work with what you got, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah. No, seriously, you guys, it's been such a blast. I've really enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Totally.
Come again.